big with 2 G's. I'm going to repeat that. That's big with 2 G's. So we back with another episode of the BiGG Umbrella Podcast. That's big with 2 G's. I'm going to repeat that. That's big with 2 G's. The BiGG Umbrella Podcast. And we got Xtina in the building. Hello.
Hello, hello.
So we always like to start off with, so where you from? Because we always like obviously promoting San Diego and stuff like that. Whoever's out here, you don't have to be from it, but where are you from?
Born and raised Southeast San Diego.
Southeast San Diego. I'm familiar with that. What was growing up in Southeast like for you?
Honestly, it was the best. I wouldn't know anything other than the Southeast. I didn't know anything other than the Southeast until I fucking left. But growing up here was...
And what part of the Southeast was that?
So I was born in Encanto. We moved around a lot. So I grew up in a family where we pretty much moved every year based off of, rental agreements were up. You had to fucking go.
Mm-hmm.
So lived in Encanto, lived in Spring Valley, lived on Adams, lived off Streamview. Then we ended up in Oak Park on 54th Street. So that was like finally established some roots in Oak Park. And I went to Oak Park Elementary 3rd grade. And then we lived at that house from 3rd grade to my parents are still there. And we're sitting in that house right now.
Where was your favorite house growing up?
This house, all of my memories are here. All of my memories are here.
So, and this is the house that you grew up with your mom and your dad here?
My mom, my dad, my brother Mickey, my older brother Anthony lived here for some time. I have a sister. Her name is Lulu. It's Yolanda, but we call her Lulu.
Mm-hmm.
My parents' house was always the house of so we grew up in the Southeast. So part of growing up in the Southeast is like there's some shit that everyone's dealing with, right? Whether that's drugs, violence, whatever. So murder. So in our family, we have experienced all of those things. And my parents became the house that took people in if they were struggling to get clean, or if, one of my aunts or my uncles ended up in jail or prison, my parents took in my cousins. So a lot of my cousins feel more like siblings than they do cousins, because that's just the reality of growing up with incarceration, growing up with addiction, and all of that shit.
So with your parents having to take everybody in, what were they having to go through as well with them having to deal with everybody else's?
My parents are true earth angels. They are servants of the community. They are servants of our family. I grew up in a family, even though, right, it was ridden with like alcohol, drugs, and abuse and all of that. I also grew up in a family that cared about change. So my dad was a social justice activist. So I was door knocking for campaigns at 5 years old. My parents were advocating for free immunization drives, blood drives, like anything in our community. Like growing up in the Southeast, like there's some shit, but like the Southeast also supports each other. And my parents were great examples of that, of even if we're struggling, we're going to be here to lead and create change.
Right. And where are you at on the sibling? Because I know you named off a couple of your siblings. Where are you at on that totem pole?
I'm number 3.
Okay, and so is that the middle?
It's hard to tell with 4 kids. There's 4 kids. So there's 4 blood kids, right? And then I have cousins that feel like siblings. Right. But yeah, so it's boy, girl, boy. So I'm girl number 2, child number 3.
So you the one that needed to do everybody leaned on, or you was the one that had to do the leaning on to kind of get through the things?
It's so funny because I think in our family we've all had times where
it was your turn.
Yeah, like to be the one that everyone leaned on, or to be the one where like, shit, I fucking need help. Like I need help. And I'm blessed to come from a family that supports that and shows who doesn't just like drop shit. Like we all support each other. Like my parents literally support me with anything that I do. So that doesn't, like, I'm the only one of all 4 kids to graduate high school and go to college. And then I like took that to a whole nother level. So I'm the nerd in the family. I didn't do super amazing in high school, so community college was my only option. And the only reason why I did community college was because my dad said, well, you're 18, so you can pay rent or go to college.
Right.
And I was like, I'm fucking going to college.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great deal to me.
Yeah.
And so I honestly stayed in college because I didn't want to pay fucking rent.
Right.
And then I became addicted to learning. So as I had family members kind of addicted to the streets or addicted to drugs, I channeled all of that into my education.
Mm-hmm.
And so after community college, I took a little bit longer because like I wasn't at college level for my shit. So community college, you know, they say takes 2 years. That's like
Right.
if you are like top notch fucker.
Right. You got.
I was not a top notch fucker.
You got to be getting down.
Yeah. So let's just be real and clear for people who, you know, are, if anyone's listening to this who's younger, like take your fucking time, whatever. So community college, I think, took me like 4 or 5 years. And then I transferred to UC. I was living in Santa Cruz. So I was living here when I started community college. I then moved up to Santa Cruz and went to a community college out there, graduated, and then I transferred to UC Santa Cruz. And then once I transferred,
you get a lot of schooling.
I'm a nerd, bro. It's not even done there. Like I double majored there. I had 2 bachelors from that university, graduated magna cum laude, spoke at my graduation, like nerd, okay? Like nerd.
You did the whole thing.
I did the whole goddamn thing because like I said, I was channeling all of my shit from my youth and my rage and like it was a place where I could write about that. It was a place where I could talk about that shit. That's what it's all about. Unless you were majoring in the sciences, which is great, but like that's not what I majored in.
It wasn't for you.
Yeah. And then worked in the community for a bit. I always worked with youth when I worked out there. So I lived in the mountains and I worked in Watsonville. So for people who know Watsonville, it's a very poor farming community where it's about 95% migrant families, probably 86% only speak Spanish. So like there isn't a whole lot of English.
What made you move out there?
To be honest, dude.
Okay.
Like I was gonna say a different word.
Yeah.
A man. I was in a relationship. And so went out there and worked in the community, got my degrees, and then I decided to apply to graduate school. And I got into UC Riverside, and I had a scholarship and they were paying me to come. So I came down to UC Riverside, lived in Riverside for some time. I'm a nerd. I got a couple of national fellowships for my research and was working in South LA.
And what is a national fellowship?
Yeah. So I received the Ford Foundation Fellowship and the National Science Foundation Fellowship to support me in graduate school so that I wouldn't have to like work and go to school.
Right.
So they were basically paying me to just dive into my research and what I was going to be creating and writing on. And my research, again, I come from the Southeast. I care about families impacted by incarceration because that's like what I fucking grew up in. And so my research was on gendered incarceration. So how incarceration impacts women and men differently and how that informs our society's views of what is normal or not normal. And so basically, if you're not normal, you fucking get incarcerated. And I'm an abolitionist. If it's not clear, I am not pro prisons. I'm very anti. So I am about creating worlds in which we heal from our shit. And because what I found is that a lot of my family, yes, maybe they did some really harmful things to themselves, to other people, to the community. But for the most part, incarceration did not help them. It made things way worse for everybody. It hurt our family. It tore us apart. It caused way more pains. It became a generational wound that now I see my cousins on the same path. And so now it's like what I mean by generational, right? It's like uncle, cousin, right? It's going down the line. And so my research was really on trying to, look into this shit and critique the system. And while I was doing that, I was also running restorative healing circles in South LA at a reentry home for women. So women who had recently been released from prison who are now trying to better themselves and transition back into society. And while I was doing that work, I decided to say, fuck my PhD. And I dropped out and I left and I started my business because I would rather work with the community than within the university system.
Have you ever experienced incarceration?
Not me. I am the only one in my family who's never been incarcerated.
Kudos to you.
Because I'm the fucking nerd.
Hey, that's a clap. That's a kudos for you. So what actually, I know it was a lot to do with schooling. What strayed you to keep you out from going down that path since you've seen it so much?
So that's a really great question. Honestly, I don't consider weed to be a drug. So I'm like, let me preface that for my next sentence. I never did drugs. I have no interest in doing any drugs. Never did drugs. I don't even like pharmaceutical drugs. Like I don't like what it fucking does to the body and to the mind. And so that probably was the biggest thing for me, is like growing up in a family ridden with addiction, that like I had no interest in partaking in any of that shit. Number one. Number two, obviously, well, maybe it's not obvious. I definitely have done some things for sure that would have me in trouble with the law. And it was always about, you know, what we were taught is like, you just don't get caught. That was like what we were taught. You just don't get caught. But what kept me out was when I was 18, my younger brother, who was 17, was facing 25 to life. And that's really what catapulted my critique of the system and staying out of that path.
Right, because it's just like looking at that, it's like, I don't want that for myself.
I don't want that for myself. I dated fuckers who ended up in there, and then like you're fucking going on the weekend to visit. It's stupid.
So what you see in jail so much, I mean, obviously, well, I don't know your story with the men. You said you dated a lot of men who ended up in jail. If you've seen that so much, what made you continue to basically go down that path with them?
With the people who I was dating who were incarcerated, what made me a false sense of loyalty at that time. What kept me out and why I'm committed to the work that I do now is I'm committed to working with people who are, one, here to undo the prison system, and two, who are here to undo their own wounds. So it's not just about critiquing the system, but this system has been in our communities for fucking generations, right? And we've internalized this. It's how we think about ourselves. It's how we parent, right? We even we punish ourselves, and that's not how we're supposed to be. And so what I'm committed to is undoing the ways in which we have internalized incarceration or colonization or even enslavement. So it's all about liberation for me, like mind, body, soul, like literally freeing our mentality, our emotions, our spirits, so that we can all live as our true selves.
What do you feel you're more spiritual or religious?
I'm way more spiritual. I will not prescribe to a church.
What brought you to be so spiritual?
I believe we're born, we come into this world knowing who we are, that we're connected to the divine. It was something I was always connected to, so much so that like even when I was a young child, my mom shared stories of me like talking, you know, to entities or to beings. And she, you know, most children say, it's like, oh, it's my friend or my imaginary friend or this or that. And my mom would be like, who are you talking to? And I would be like, you can't see this angel right here. Like I knew I was talking to angels and I could see them, and it freaked her out. Like she was like, thought I was going to die, because you don't hear of stories of children talking to angels unless like they're crossing over or something. Right. And so I was born connected to the spirit world, and then it was something that I suppressed and then decided to tune back into throughout adulthood. But definitely once I became a mom, it just kind of, your intuition unlocks in a whole nother way when you're creating life out of nothing.
Right. What was it like growing up for you with both parents?
That's the only reality that I have. So having both parents was a major blessing. It also was a curse because my parents, again, there's a history of abuse in every sense of the word and drugs. And so their story of being together through literally everything, I thought I had to endure abusive relationships because that's what I saw.
So that was basically normalized for you in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you kind of figured, oh, well, my parents went through this.
Yeah. And so that's what it's like, this false loyalty. Like I was loyal to a fault. It's like, if I'm going to be with you, I'm going to be this ride or die. It was more about proving I'm down instead of learning that I need to be down for myself. And so that's more of like what I learned for myself, and what I help people with is like, you don't have to be down for another person that's not down for you. Like,
what brought you to that realization that I should be more down for myself than worried about I need to prove how down I am for you?
Great question. Becoming a mom more than anything, honestly, I did not have the strength to walk away from an unhealthy relationship. And once I was pregnant with my son, it was like, there was no way. If I bring him into this world, that's me letting him know that like this way of treating people is fucking okay.
No, I see what you're saying. Like you didn't want your son to experience that or think that was normal.
Absolutely. So, while some people may think like, oh, a torn family, how horrible. Really? How horrible? Because if we would have stayed together, he would have been fucking torn in that house all the time. At least now when he's with me, because his dad's in his life, at least I know that when he's with me, we can anchor ourselves in love, in joy, and forgiveness, and processing our emotions, in saying, hey, look, you can say no. It's fucking okay to tell people no. Like, we have to learn how to say yes to ourselves. We have to let go of these expectations. We have these false expectations as a society of like, well, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be married if you're going to have a child.
Right.
I was never fucking married. I mean, he's a fucking bastard child. So was I, but whatever.
That's even funny to hear a bastard child, because I remember that saying like way back in the day.
Oh my God, it was a fucking
somebody
thing.
would say something like that. What has being a mother now taught you? What's motherhood like for you? And on top of that, being a single mother, because that's always a tough one. I grew up with just my mom, so I know that isn't the easiest thing for you.
Yeah, that's really hard as a single mom, because you get in your head of, I need to also be the dad. Right?
And you can't be the dad.
You cannot be the dad. That's it right there, is like, when for myself is knowing that like I'm not meant to be his dad. I'm not meant to be the masculine energy in his life. I'm meant to be the caretaker and the nurturer, but I'm also meant to be the example. And so motherhood for me is not about dictating how my child needs to be, or controlling him, or like making sure he's well behaved, because we all want that shit. Like, you want your child to be respectful, to have manners, to act fucking
accordingly. Right.
Yes. Okay. Like, you go places, like, don't act a fucking fool.
Right. Don't grab everything.
Like,
stop running.
Can you put them in your pocket?
Stop screaming all the time. Yeah, I want you to act accordingly.
Yes, sir. Please. Like, can you have some fucking manners? So it's less about that, even though that's like what our ego thinks, right? Like, we've got all these expectations of like, that's how it should be. And like I said, I battle with those things, and it's constantly about letting and releasing those go. But motherhood for me is more about keeping my son tuned into his spirit as long as possible, so that he knows who the fuck he is when he goes out in the world, and that nobody is telling him who and how he needs to be, or that he needs to, subscribe to these false expectations.
Right.
And so are you allergic to cats? We can move that cat if you are.
No, you're fine.
Okay. I was like, let's just move him.
It's already everywhere, so we are already in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, motherhood for me is about allowing my son to be himself, not what I think he needs to be, and keeping him tuned into his spirit, because like I said, children come in connected. They know who they are. They're pure, and they're sweet, and they are themselves. And then they get fucked up. my parents. And so I used to work with children. So I used to only work with children. I used to have a play therapy room.
Yeah.
And then after doing that for like 2 years, I was like, fuck this shit. It's the damn adults that are fucking up these babies.
Like, I want to repair these adults now.
Yeah, I only want to work with adults. The only children, I do work with some youth. The only youth that I work with, I have to be working with the parents first. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's probably best so they could get a feel for who's working with their child anyway. So with you always looking to take care of everybody else, who is taking care of you? Who do you come to talk to when now you having these ups and downs? And because everybody coming to talk to you about their problems and how they can get better, who are you talking to?
I like your questions. I have an amazing, like, I have no idea what it's like to have surface ass fucking relationships. Like, all of the relationships in my life are profound, deep, authentic. Like, we keep it fucking real. I'm not going to talk about the weather with nobody. If we talking about the weather, like, you probably going to be out my life soon. So like, that's just, I'm just going to keep it real. So my circle is dope as fuck. Like, hella supports me. I can share what I'm fully in. But I also like work with a psychologist myself, because I think it's needed. It's important. I've had life coaches. I've had business coaches. I've had therapists. But like, my go-to people are my two brothers, for damn sure, like, every day.
It's always good to have a support system. So that's definitely, and with all you go through, so that's definitely a good one already for you.
Oh, people go through so much. I mean, so much. I mean, I'm not trying to bring in, like, public news into this shit, but like, we just saw on social media, like, Twitch, super popular, well-known, looks like he's the most happy family man in the fucking world, shining his light everywhere he goes, into every space he fucking walks into, takes his own life. Like, we can go through several people who are role models in the community that are hurting. And so pain does not discriminate against success or class or ethnicity or fucking gender or whatever. Like, we all have some shit all of the time, and we have to have, and not just our friends, like, you have to, and I was just talking to another person about this, is like, find a third party professional to really help you through your shit, whether that's a coach, a therapist, a fucking psychologist, a healing circle, a fucking space where you can really go and process through your shit, so that you're not inviting and involving your family into all your shit. And I see this especially when you're like in a relationship. So like, when I work with couples or someone who's in a relationship, like, that's the number one rule. I'm like, number one, no more talking about you two with all your homegirls. Because now all your homegirls are going to hate your man.
Right.
Because every time what you do, he does something. And it's the same for men. I'm like, hey, homie, like, whatever's going on between you and your girl, you come to me, okay? We're going to keep this in confidence. I'm not even going to tell. If this was ever even subpoenaed by the courts, not fucking giving that shit without your permission. Like, confidentiality runs the success of what I do. So you're feeling some type of way. You come and you tell me. You don't go tell your homies. You don't go tell your fucking mom, because then your mom's going to hate this woman forever. Like, but these are things like we're not told, right? And like, those are the people we go to. Like, women, we go to our girls. Men, you go to your mom, or you go to your homies, or you go to where, like, you cannot do that. Because then it starts that tension and the toxicity, because then if you choose to move through your challenges, whether that's the infidelity, maybe it's physical abuse, maybe it's emotional literacy or illiteracy, like, moving through those together, and then everyone else is like, well, I thought we were team no him. I thought we were team no her.
Right.
Right. And it's like, now it, like, creates weirdness in all kinds of spaces.
What was life like in the mountains for you?
Yeah, I loved living in the mountains in Santa Cruz. That was a whole different vibe. Like, we didn't even have heating. So
was you like living off the earth in the mountains, or this was like, what was your situation?
Oh yeah, we were hella off the grid. So I had a house. Okay, it was like a cabin, a 2-story cabin, and and it had a full on like wraparound deck. Nobody was there. You could walk out naked. No one's gonna fucking see you. Okay, you could sunbathe naked. You could fucking smoke your weed and be like, I'm cool out here. Santa Cruz, everyone smokes weed. It was a thing 15 years ago.
Still a thing now.
Yeah, but like it's a thing now here, but like 15 years ago, that was like it was everywhere, you know, and like it was, even though it was illegal then in Santa Cruz, just like in Humboldt, it was fine. Like no police officer is going to stop you for that. So living in the mountains, like I had to chop my own wood, start a fire in the morning if it was cold. It was a whole different thing.
Chopping wood.
Yeah, I was a mountain woman for sure.
Wow. And what brought you to leave the mountains?
Well, what took me to the mountains first was some man. I had never lived in the mountains, and met him here in San Diego. He actually used to do a lot of community work in San Isidro, since you said you were down south. And we lived in City Heights, and then he applied to UC Santa Cruz and he got in, and I was like, you should go. And he was like, I want you to go with me.
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
And so I was like, okay, I guess. So he deferred or postponed his enrollment for like a quarter while I got all my shit together, in the sense of like closing out work, giving my notices, transferring, because I was at community college down here, to then we moved up there. And I've always been the breadwinner. So, I mean, now that I think about it, this fool was just mooching off my fucking finances.
Actually going back her mind, she's like, this motherfucker had me move up there. Okay, I see what you did right there. Good play.
So, you know, he could have just moved into the dorms, but then with me, he got this fucking 2-story cabin. And so we lived out there. That was
how long did you stay out there?
I think we were there for 6 years.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, it was a minute.
Dang, in the mountains.
Yeah, like off the grid. I didn't have no TV, no flat iron, no hair dryer, no internet, no nothing.
Wow, that's a different experience. That really, like you said, no. That's a whole lot of no's to have nothing. So coming back from now 6 years in the mountain, what was the transition like for you then?
Oh, then I went to Riverside. If you don't know Riverside, it's a special place. Riverside is the desert. So
you went from the mountains to the desert.
Oh, and it's, you know, Riverside's a desert, like just different issues. Poverty for sure. Lots of fucking like heroin in fucking Riverside. And meth. And yes. So moved there, and after a year of us being there together, we parted ways. That's me being civil in the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in a 1-bedroom like loft in Riverside, and then I got a 2-bedroom like duplex, and then I decided to come back to San Diego, came back home. And so for some time I was commuting for my, you know, doctoral program between here and there. And then things shifted for me. I got pregnant and my whole life changed.
And then what brought you to your business?
The biggest thing I think that it was on the outside, I looked like I had all my shit together, right? I had 2 national awards. I was presenting my work across the nation at different universities. I was being asked.
So that was a good feeling.
Yeah, it's a great feeling when you're not drunk all the time. Yes, it was a great feeling, but at the same time, like I very much felt like an imposter. Like I felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. Again, like my family didn't know what I was in, because nobody in my family, barely anyone graduated high school. So to then even know what community college, university versus grad school, like it just like didn't, it was like, oops, sorry, hit your thing, like
No
two
worries.
different frequencies,
Yeah.
you know? Like I'd go out with my brothers because they're my fucking like best friends, and we'd be drinking, and then like some guy would come hit on me, and my brothers would be like, she's a professor, don't talk to her. Like, she's a fucking nerd. Like, don't waste, like, don't talk to her.
Yeah.
You know? And I'd be like, dude, what are you doing? And
You're
they're like,
killing my game.
well, and they're like, well, aren't you? And I'm like, okay, like, but like, are we really doing this?
Yeah.
Like, we really doing this?
Right. And these are people you hang out with, so it's happening all the time for you.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Like, just, you know, goofing off, talking shit. Like, that's just, you know, I'm like, that's just the Southeast. Like,
That's probably what brought about a sense of humor for yourself.
Oh, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I bring that into the healing work that I do. Like, I'm not like your traditional therapist. So what brought me to healing work was that on the outside, I looked like I had all my shit together. And I wanted to know why I could be successful in all these other spaces, but not with myself, or especially in like intimate partner relationships or romantic relationships and dating. Like, how am I successful in other spaces? And then in this space, I am getting abused or mistreated. And so I wanted to like understand that. And so I dove more into the healing aspect. But what's different about the healing work that I do is that I do bring in my education with my PhD, which was about critiquing systems of colonization, imprisonment, and enslavement. And I talk about, right, what I was doing in my PhD was the external happenings of those. And so now what I do with healing work is how does that fuck with our minds?
Right.
And then we become those systems in our everyday life.
What did you feel you were lacking in those relationships that you then realized, okay, I wasn't doing this or I wasn't doing that?
I hated myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
and
hated.
On the outside, it looked like you had it all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was in my 20s. I had a car. I had a motorcycle. I had my own place. Like, there aren't a whole lot of women who live by themselves in their fucking 20s and have multiple vehicles. Like,
right.
That's just not a thing.
Right.
And I was accepting abuse because nobody could hurt me as much as I hurt myself inside.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so the amount of self-hate that I had, and I couldn't have told you this when I was in my self-hate.
Of course, you
have to start unraveling the self, and you have to start feeling your shit, because I was completely apathetic and numb. Like, I didn't know that I felt this about myself. Like, nobody wakes up and is like, I hate I mean, maybe, but like, for the most part, when you're actually in self-hate, you would never admit that you hate yourself. Mm-hmm. It's not until you start to learn what is love, because again, as much as my parents love each other, the example that I grew up with was extremely toxic, right? So I didn't know what a healthy love looked like. I had to learn what that was, and I had to learn how to give that to myself. And I had to heal through my triggered responses and my traumas, and learn that that's what they were, because I just thought that, you know, like, oh, I just thought it was normal to like cuss someone out that you love. Or I thought it was normal to like throw something at someone you love if you're pissed off. Like, if I'm mad at you, I'm going to fucking throw my beer bottle. Like, that's just what we do. And then you realize, like, that shit's not okay.
Right. Like, that's not normal.
That is not okay.
Right.
You know, like, just because you experienced it or you grew up with it doesn't make it okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you can stop it.
Right. Because it's like you're not a prisoner to it.
You can fucking stop.
Yeah.
And not only can you stop, you don't have to live with the guilt or shame yourself. You are not what you did, right? You did that. Maybe you knew better, maybe you didn't, but you don't have to carry that over you and say that that's who you are, because it's not.
Right. Who gave you that healthy love that helped you then get through all the trauma?
Myself.
Perfect. Perfect. Like you said,
that's honestly, that's the biggest way to heal your shit. Like, nobody else can give it to you. Mm-hmm. You have to learn how to give it to yourself. Like, that is the biggest way to heal generational traumas.
Mm-hmm. What's it like now living on the no, actually, I was gonna ask, how long has your business been running for you?
I went solely by myself in 2019.
And now that's basically just been a self-sustaining business for you. That's all that you've actually been having to do.
That's all that I do. Self-sustaining for any business owner is you pour so much into your business
Yeah.
and you fall and you fall and you fall and you fall and you fall. And you know what? You get yourself back up every fucking time. And so, yes, self-sustaining with a bunch of shit ton of falls.
Right. But now looking back on it with all that, like we talked about earlier, looking back on it, it's even more than it just being self-sustaining. It's more about what you do for people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I mean, what people I've never met, people who have worked with me one-on-one. So I work with people one-on-one. Working with me one-on-one for the most part looks like we meet once a week virtually on the phone. I was virtual before fucking COVID. So I work with people across the U.S. I can do Canada or Mexico if you speak English. I'm not fluent in any other language. But so we meet weekly like you would with a therapist or something along those lines. And then in our session, we identify like something that you're working, like that you're in, and that we want to fucking like identify the root, eradicate the fucking bullshit, and recreate who you are. And so there'll be like a healing assignment. I'm not one of those people where you just come and talk. Like, I'm going to talk with you. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to talk shit. We're going to laugh. Like, we're going to have I try to make healing as fun as possible. Like, it should not be this daunting, like, oh, it's so painful to heal. Like, it's so not. It's so enjoyable. Like, it's so much fucking fun. And so, yeah, I work with people one-on-one, but I also have like group spaces where we do like healing circles, or I have ebooks that people, like, if they don't, for whatever reason, don't want to work with me or don't want to be in a group space and they want to do it themselves, I created or wrote ebooks. I have the decks. You know, we pulled some fucking...
With the affirmations.
The affirmations, yep. The Divine Power Deck. That's at xtinageri.net. The Divine Power Deck has some profanity because I believe that profanity and divinity are not inseparable. So what do we pull for today? The first one I pulled before you got here was divine timing. Everyone is going through their own shit. Everything unfolds exactly as it is meant. I'm exactly where I need to be. And then you pulled only one me. There has never been anyone like me. There is no one like me. There will only be one me. Act like it.
Would you look at that?
Look at that shit. And then we got ancestral presence. I call upon my ancestors and trust their guidance. I am never alone, and I am surrounded in love. So, like, for those three to come out together, that's super fucking dope. But we are all going through some shit all the fucking time. And to learn how to process our shit, to not dump our shit onto somebody, or how not to poison. And what I mean by poison is, let's say I had a tough day at work, right? And I'm exhausted and I'm depleted and I'm pissed. And I go to pick up my son from school and then I snap at him. That's poison. We can learn ways to go from space to space, even if we're getting hurt or depleted or stressed, into the next space without spilling that caca onto somebody else. Right? And so that's what I help people with, right? Or processing their trauma. So then you're not going from, especially, right, we were talking about how I with men, I think it was with you or maybe it was with my dad, is that when I work, a lot of times if I work with men through heartbreak, is like, okay, let's identify where the fucking pain is. Right. Is it actually from this relationship, or is it from a different one, or is it from childhood? Right? Like, let's unravel those pieces and let's put you back together. And so that you're not then thinking like every woman's going to give you the fucking silent treatment. Right. Because they're not. So stop that shit. But then, like, if this happened to you here, you think, oh, all these are like this. It's like, no. That's a wound, honey, and we can heal that wound. And guess what? When you heal that wound, you're not going to attract somebody with the same bullshit. Then
you'll be on a whole different wavelength.
You will.
How do you deal with difficult customers?
I don't even know what that would feel like because I don't know what a difficult customer would be. Difficult, I guess, would be if
in the sense that they don't have the same views as, or you don't really agree upon the same things.
So with the people that I work with, we work where they want to work.
Okay.
I don't put my ideals or my views onto their healing journey. It's really more about me helping foster them developing their own intuition, their own tools. So I might give them the tool, but they have to do the fucking work. So I'm not healing their lives. They are healing their own lives.
So you have to separate yourself from that portion and let basically them get it all out. I'm just here to be a sponge and take this all in and help you.
A sponge to take it all in and a guide more than anything. I hold space to let them know that like they're not crazy for whatever they're feeling, that it's okay to, it's okay to feel like, hey, I want to kill my husband. Maybe you need to get that fucking thought out, right? It's like, oh, once I felt like slitting his throat, I wasn't going to do it. But if I have a safe space to say, oh, that's how pissed off I was, then it's like, oh, I'm not gonna fucking snap on his ass, right?
If they kept that in there, then she might end up slitting his throat one day.
Yes, or poisoning his soup, or who knows what, right? Like, but if I have a safe space to get it out, then it's like, oh, well, that wasn't that. Like, now it's out, right? And so I help people develop tools for identifying like what's the fucking problem and how to get that shit out. And I don't really have difficult customers because it's really not about my viewpoint. It's what's going to work for them.
Right.
What's their viewpoint? If they're religious, then by all means, let's fuck with God, like, or whatever your religion is, right? And like, I do have clients who like, all right, they're Christian or Catholic or Jewish, and we go down those paths. And then I have people who are more into spirituality or energy or new agey woo-woo stuff. And cool, let's go there. Like if that's what you're into, like I'm all for it. But I'm not going to be like, you need to go my way, because that would be, in my opinion, colonial. Like that's me saying, that's like operating in a hierarchy, which I'm here to fucking undo, and me saying that my way is better than yours, and that's stupid.
What made you basically feels like so strong about going the opposite way of the system?
Because I hate force. That's like rape. And forcing anyone to do anything does not work. It doesn't work. I mean, try it in your parenting and that shit doesn't work. I mean, my dad knows. He tried to force me to do all kinds of shit. Like, you have to be this way or you're going to get whatever. Like, all right, fuck you, Dad. I'll jump out my window. And I did. And so he nailed my window shut. And, you know, you can't force kids to do things. So for me and my parenting, instead of controlling my child, it's more about how do I help you process your emotions? I want to be the person that you want to come to with your shit. I don't want to be the person you're hiding your shit from. Right. And for parents, like, take ownership over guiding the narrative for anything with your children. Guide the narrative for dating. Guide the narrative for who they are. Guide the narrative for fucking sex. Like, stop being scared to talk about this shit with your children. Like, don't expect the school to do that. Like, we have to guide those narratives. And as parents, right? And not in a demeaning, controlling way, but like guide our child to have their own views that are rooted in self-value and self-respect. But our children aren't going to value themselves if we don't.
Right.
And so we have to learn how to do that. And what
Set that example.
And what does self-value actually look like? It's going to be different for each person.
Right. So for you, what is it like now growing up next to an Indian reserve?
I love where I live.
Yeah.
I purposefully moved out there because, grew up in the Southeast. I'm very white looking. Okay. I'm the only like white chocolate chip walking down the street. Like vanilla bean, here it goes.
Yeah.
So out there, I wanted, so I hope it's clear that I'm here to undo the ways in which we are duped as a society, right? And so I'm very critical about the history that my child learns. And so I knew that Malachi is my son, his first year of like school, like I homeschooled him. He was home with me the first 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then for kindergarten, we homeschooled him. And it was very important to me that he knew words like colonization and that he understood the real history of Thanksgiving, or we call it Thanksgiving. And we can celebrate and break bread as a family, but you also must learn the history of genocide. And we do this for all holidays, right? Like let's learn the real shit.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was looking at a school for him, it was important to me to have a school that was conscious of those things. So he does go to a school that is on, native land. So there is a council that oversees the curriculum that the school receives, so that he's not getting this kind of like white settler Christopher Columbus yeehaw thing that we all got.
Right.
So there's that history. His school also has a very big social emotional component, and that was important to me, knowing who I am and what I care about in this world. What we're all in, like we just went through 2 years of COVID, and it was important for me that my child has a space to like feel shit. Plus he's growing up in a very, very toxic co-parenting relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so my child is torn between two homes, and there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of animosity. There's just like a lot of shit going on. And it was important to me in picking a school that had that. So living out there, it's very interesting because you have, your Trumpsters, and they think it's their land. And then but in the same space, you've got this person like coming in on their golf cart with like the Trump flag. And then you have this other like native father with his like Geronimo shirt on, like we've been here longer than you. And then you've got like a couple of Filipino families, a couple of Black families, clearly mixed families. And we all just like coexist. I've never seen that anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
To coexist, like, clearly, we all have different beliefs. We all have different politics, but we're all going to coexist and love one another for the children. I don't know what's more beautiful than that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to truly have that. Because usually it's like, that is not what it was in the Southeast. It's like, we hate fucking anyone else. And like, not hate, but pretty much hate. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're
you got
just
an issue with somebody.
Like we got issues, or like, oh, anything north of the 8, like, they're hoity-toity or whatever. And out there, it really is like, he gets to see, if I lived in the Southeast, he would never experience that. Never. I mean, it's the first time I'm truly experiencing it.
Right.
Like, we really can coexist. We really can create through difference.
What was it like for you running that crisis hotline?
Yeah, I honestly felt honored. So the crisis hotline was, every other weekend I would open up my phone line to be able to answer crisis calls around the clock. So,
and this is for 24 hours straight. You are answering people's calls on your personal phone.
Yes.
Not the Cricket line, not the Obama phone. She is answering it on her personal phone.
It was an honor. It was an honor because it required being fully present. And for me, when I would answer those calls, everyone does it different. For me, it was about not, what are you in? Why are you feeling this way? I was just trying to have a good ass time.
Mm-hmm.
To get them to laugh, to get them to love themselves, to get them to enjoy the moment, because they were just in a moment of not wanting to live. I loved it.
That's what you're saying. Like, it's an honor that you were able to do that for those people when they're calling when in a crisis moment.
Yes.
I can definitely see how you would be honored for somebody to call you when they can call whoever else they can call, but they decided to call you that night.
Well, and sometimes they would call and they were like, I was told to call this. I don't know why I'm supposed to call you.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else told me I'm supposed to call.
Mm. What was a downtime in your business that you felt like that you can now look back on and be like, I'm so glad I didn't give up?
I think down can be determined by and defined different ways, right? I think a lot of times when people think down in business, it would be like down in like financial numbers.
And I'm definitely not. I'm saying whatever.
Yeah, no. And so what I'm like, whatever that down is, what gets you out is you have to focus on what's not down, right? And that's the only way that's going to keep you going. So for me, what's never been down is my impact on people's lives. And whenever I feel like giving up, because there's always going to be those moments. And same with like, I help people heal through shit, right? Like I'm never going to be the healing coach or guide that's like, oh yeah, once you learn these tools, life's going to be so blissful. Right. Like, no, like
you're going to still go through things.
I still fuck up all the goddamn time. I'm human. Like,
we were made this way.
So you learn it's lessons each time, and you just dive deeper within yourself and whoever you're relating with, right? So for me, whenever I have those moments of like, fuck, I don't know, maybe I should just like go get a job or like, I don't know, whatever, is I shit you not, and this is how the universe works, I'll get flooded with messages from people saying like how much I have impacted their life or how much the decks have helped them, or magically like there'll be more orders. Like that's just what it is. Just like people are like, oh my God, I've been meaning to order this deck, or I've been meaning to like work with you. And I'm like, oh, like, and so you just have to push through because that's when the magic happens. Like
when
if
you keep on pushing,
you just cannot, if there's something in your heart, you have to trust that and you have to lean into it. Like there's just no other way.
This cat be loving me. I swear this cat loved me today.
Because it hasn't jumped on me once.
how good does it feel to have become an author?
Honestly, it still feels fucking surreal. I have a contract with a publisher to write a book, and the book was supposed to be like a workbook for the first affirmation deck, but I'm pretty sure it's going to turn into my framework or my philosophy for healing, which is heal your shit. And heal is an acronym for honor, embrace, ascend, and love your shit. And so
she makes sure that she got to throw that last part in there.
Yeah. So it would be like if you had a cat or a dog take a poo-poo over there, you would not ignore it. Most people would not ignore it.
Right. Most people.
Right. But what happens if we ignore a pile of poop? Flies come, maggots come, roaches, more problems, more shit comes, right? And that's what happens emotionally with us. And we go on about our lives ignoring our shit. So we got all this nasty ass maggots and other shit going on inside of us because no one wants to clean up that fucking pile of poop that was just like, boop. It's like you could have just like picked up the turtle turd.
But now the turtle turd is this big.
It's ginormous. So at first, if we were to take the analogy of poop, right? Okay. What's that cat's name, Dad? Okay, that is Molly. I thought it was. So Molly went poop. You have to first honor and acknowledge, like, oh, shit, there's some poop. Oh, I'm feeling some type of way. Then you have to go up and you have to embrace it. You got to pick that shit up. You got to touch it. Like, oh, fuck. So I've identified some shit in me. Now I actually need to like go to it and embrace it. What does this actually feel like? How did this really hurt me? Where am I holding this in my body?
Right.
How has this impacted other spaces? Like, man, I'm really doing this to my daughter. I'm really doing this to my son. Like, I'm really doing this in my relationships. Yeah, I really am. Then you have to move it. You got to ascend. You got to like move it out, hopefully out of the house, right? So you got to ascend. You got to move with your emotions. You got to move through it. And that's not always the easiest. Then you have to go back, hopefully, and disinfect and love that area, because you're not going to just leave poop residue. And that's what we have to do with our emotions. So you identify, you honor, you embrace it, you move through it, and then you have to go back and teach yourself how to love in that area. And then you have to just do it over and over, because guess what? More shit reveals itself. Like, you'll be in a relationship, you'll be triggered, you'll be at work, you'll be triggered. You think you're driving yourself crazy, and it's just, you're not. That's just a part of the healing process. It unravels, shows you new ways.
But you continue that process that you present to these people, and that could obviously help you in the long run. Just continue it over and over and over and over.
Mm-hmm. And there's different ways of honoring. There's different ways of embracing, different ways of moving through, right? And so that book is really about showing people, like, here are several tools. Here are several ways to move through these different stages of healing. Fucks with the one you want. Like, whichever one you vibe with, that's yours.
I'm putting all these out here for you. I'm not just showing you one way. It's tons. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely good. So while I still have you on here, is there any socials that you wanted to put out there? Any upcoming projects you have coming up? Anything that you wanted to put out to let people know how to get in contact with you, or anything that you're doing?
Yeah. So my website is xtinageri.net, XTINAGERI.net.
And that's Geri, not Gary.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Instagram, it's xtina.geri. So XTINA.GERI. I'm named after Saint Gerard. My mom is Catholic. Facebook, it's Christina CH, or you could do Xtina Geri, either one. So Christina Geri or Xtina Geri. What I have going on now, decks are $22 for every Divine Power deck that is purchased. I am partnered with Prisoner from the Inside Out. It's a nonprofit that works with, right now we're in California prisons. We are expanding, but what we do is we go inside the prisons to teach kind of self-control and other different things. And so the men who go through our program, they have time taken off of their sentence, number one. And number two, the goal is they know themselves better. They've developed some self-control, and so that they're not going to come back. So it increases recidivism. And so for every deck that is purchased, a deck is donated to the men who graduate. They identify a family member to send a deck to. So the decks are used in the program. And then when they graduate, they identify a family member they want to send the deck to. So the deck goes to the family. That way, as I shared, I grew up impacted. We are hurting when we're supporting our loved ones who are on the inside. And this way they have the same tools that their loved one was using, so that they're healing in the home, so that when their loved one is released, they are all supporting each other and focused on healing and not on like the fuckery. You
kind of getting them on the same wavelength to be able to, now when I get out, we kind of on the same mindset.
Mm-hmm. We're all bettering ourselves. We all know who we are. We all know that we fucked up. We all are forgiving each other. We're forgiving the system. We're forgiving other people who wronged us, and we're moving forward in our love.
Definitely. So I appreciate you even for inviting us in your space and giving us your time and the knowledge you dropped on us. It has been another episode of the BiGG Umbrella Podcast. I'm going to repeat that. The BiGG Umbrella Podcast with 2 G's, and it's a wrap.
Thank you.
No problem. That was perfect. Well, let's get some tacos, nigga. Can we really get some tacos? You trying to get some tacos? Let's get some tacos, nigga.